Okay, hello Year 10. Hope you're all well, I hope you're keeping safe, hope you had a good Easter break. I'm going to introduce to you this week's topic, which continues our study of ecology and biodiversity. This week we're looking at the subject of pollution and the effects of pollution on both land, water and air. So, let's get started. Hopefully you're familiar with this, the bottom part of this diagram, this flowchart that we looked at last as part of our lesson before, and this is the effects of increases in population. At the bottom of that we talked about more waste and pollution, and this is what we're going to focus on today. Okay, so we're looking at the different types of pollution, as I say. So in your book you're going to want to make some notes following this. We're looking at two key questions. Okay, number one is, what is pollution? And number two is, what effect does pollution have? And those are the two questions that we are going to try and answer today. So, first of all, let's look at the three different types of pollution. Okay. I'm going to lay this out in a way that I think works quite well for you. Hopefully that will help. And you might want to do something similar, or just in note form is fine as well. Okay, so we're going to start with the first type, which is land pollution. Okay. So, in terms of land pollution, we're looking at things such as solid waste. Okay, I'm sure you can think of plenty of examples, but things like plastics, metal, paper, whether it's recycled or not, obviously, those are all examples of the solid waste that we can find on land, and you've probably seen plenty of that. Okay. We can also, of course, have things like chemicals. Okay, so we're thinking here about things like herbicides. I can't spell for you. Pesticides are the sort of treatments that are used on fields, and things like crude oil and that sort of thing. Okay, paints, engine oil, all of that sort of stuff. Okay, so those are our key things around land. Okay, let's look at our second type of pollution, which is in water. Okay, and you're going to study a little bit more about water pollution in a minute. Okay, I'm going to ask you to look at some further detail about that yourselves. But we're thinking here about the contamination, the sort of pollution that happens in rivers and oceans. So, how do they get polluted, first of all? Well, they're often used, obviously, to dispose of waste. Okay, so you will have no doubt seen images of oceans that have been that have had waste dumped in them. You might have also obviously seen rivers and things like that for yourselves where things have been dumped, and they obviously travel. The rivers may transport that waste out to the oceans, but equally oceans, it may be dumped there already. Things that you'll find there: sewage, oil, chemicals, fuels, plastics, in fact anything really, even discarded old ships, anything really that can be dumped. And obviously a lot of that, critically, a lot of this with water is stuff that has come from land. So a lot of these chemicals, okay, started off on the land, and they will have seeped their way into the water system and been transferred into water pollution. Now the last of these is obviously air pollution, and you will have already, if you've watched the video already about smog, you'll have a good understanding already about the ways that air pollution is created and the effects that it has, and that's what really we're going to be our focus for a lot of the this work this week is going to be on. But we're talking here obviously about smog, about things like acid rain, and then things like nitrous oxide, sulfur dioxide, all those sort of things. Okay, we're going to look a little bit more about acid rain in a bit. Okay, but these can obviously then pollute land and water. Okay, that's pretty critical. Okay, hopefully you've got all of that. So we're going to look now at the topic of acid rain. So I'm going to do a little diagram for you, which I think helps to kind of visualise this a bit more. As you know, I'm no artist. Hopefully this will give you a bit of a context. So these are meant to be factories, things that pollute. So obviously we've got maybe a car down here. Okay. And we're going to use some of these diagrams in a moment to help us with some of these. Okay, so let's set the scene. Okay, we've got our industrial units, we've got our factories, our cars, our homes even, that are producing a lot of chemicals, a lot of poisonous gases and things like that that are being released into the atmosphere. Of particular importance here, let's use, are one that you may remember hearing about already. Sulfur dioxide, okay, is one of the most critical, and then nitrogen oxides. Those two chemicals, okay, which are released into the atmosphere. Okay, those chemicals are then blown by the wind, and they mix with water which is in the atmosphere. Okay. There's our cloud. Okay. So those chemicals travel up into the atmosphere, move around, blown around by the wind, and mix with the water in the clouds. Okay. And then this is where the acid rain is formed. Okay. So from that we get our rain formed. Okay. And that consists of two pretty harmful, pretty nasty types of acid rain: sulfuric acid and nitric acid. We know about those two types of acid in the lab. They're pretty nasty. Okay. And they do quite a lot of damage. Okay, damage in three different ways. So they can damage lakes. Okay, so they can make lakes become acidic and therefore kill aquatic life. Yeah, so that's the first thing. They can actually physically burn trees, and also roots can take up the acid from the soil. And then finally they can corrode buildings. Okay, so there we have an overview of the process of acid rain. Now, that's our look at kind of air pollution in some detail. I've talked about land pollution, and I've touched on water pollution. And what I want you guys to do as a follow-up to this, and I'm going to put all the information about what you need to do this into a separate document on Go for Schools for you, is I want you to produce, or go and research and then produce the process of eutrophication. Okay, so I'm going to write that down for you. Eutrophication, which is the process of water contamination, water pollution, and the effect that that has on biodiversity in water systems. So the way you can go about doing that is really up to you, but it is a process. So you may want to produce a cartoon strip, a flow chart, something like that, which shows how the process of eutrophication happens. Okay. Then the main bulk of your task for today, or for this week, sorry, is going to be around looking at air pollution and the effects of air pollution, and particularly reading up and making a presentation about what the current crisis that we're going through, the current pandemic has had, what effect that has had on air pollution. There's some really interesting articles, really interesting information about it at the moment as to the effect that reduction in manufacturing, the reduction in car travel and use and that kind of thing has had on air pollution. So I'm going to ask you to go away and research that. I've provided for you some links that will help you to do that, and all the information will be, as I say, on Go for Schools. So hopefully that should give you everything you need for this week. There's a diagram there on acid rain, and there's our flowchart on pollution. Okay, have a great week.